Okay, hi everybody. I'm Tim Conlon. I lead marketing for Snap Circuits, and welcome to another episode of Wired for STEM. Today, I'm really excited because we're going to talk about something really unique we haven't covered before, and this is this idea of the value of literacy and how read-alongs can help support STEM learning. And we're joined by two incredible human beings, Carly and Adam, husband and wife, and they are the creators behind the Carly and Adam platform, where they share simple, engaging activities that help teachers bring hands-on learning into their classrooms. Carly, she's a former elementary teacher, and Adam brings this background of business and really giving them a unique blend of classroom experience and creative strategy. And they've been creating resources for teachers since 2015. And in 2020, they launched the STEM Teacher Summit. And this is an online conference designed to bring educators together and share practical ideas for the classroom. Carly and Adam are really known for making STEM fun, known for making it manageable, easy to implement, and no matter what your experience level, they can help out. And their goal is really to help teachers feel confident in bringing these meaningful hands-on learning to their students without that extra stress. So Carly, Adam, thanks for joining. Welcome to Wired for STEM.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yeah,
It's
we're
fantastic.
excited to talk today.
Oh, that's so great. Before we dive into it, I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about your evolution from educator to being a business leader to this mission of advising on STEM and making it more accessible for teachers.
Sure. Yeah. So Carly is the educator of the two of us. If you have watched Carly and Adam or done anything we do, she's kind of the brains behind stuff. She's like, if we're Penn and Teller, she's Teller. She's a little bit quieter, but she's the brains behind all the tricks. And I'm kind of the louder one. But we started off, Carly has taught second, third,
Mostly 3rd grade.
yeah, sixth grade, I guess.
So yeah, I've taught a variety. I've taught in private school, public school, charter schools. Yeah, I've had a variety of experiences in education.
And in her school, they started implementing STEM. And so that's when she started thinking about, well, I could start making these. And for me, my background is in business. And I actually had an Etsy store before we did Teachers Pay Teachers. And I used to make bow ties.
That's
And I
awesome.
didn't even know how to sew. And I was like, I'm going to make bow ties because bow ties are cool because I watched a lot of Doctor Who. And I started making those and I ended up doing that full time. And then I was like, Carly, I think you could do this Teachers Pay Teachers thing. And so I opened the store for her just because she asked me to. And I was like, I'm sticking my name on that. And so that's why it's Carly and Adam. And so we've been doing that for since 2015. So just over 10 years. Uh, and we've been married for 15 years. So, and we make it work.
I love it. And you talk about a unique story. That is fantastic. From bow ties and education and making something and seeing an opportunity and bring it to life. Sounds like just a ton to be proud of already. Oh my gosh, so much fun. It's a really great story. Thanks for sharing that. And today we're talking about something really great too, right? This idea of literacy and how stories come into STEM. And maybe we could start out by talking a little bit about why do we see literacy becoming a much more important part of STEM instruction and how you guys have seen that come to life.
Well, I think when we started doing STEM, I mean, for me, I thought back to my introduction to STEM was I did first robotics in middle school and high school. And there was always like this problem that we had to solve, whether it was we were building a robot out of Legos or like going into like the shop and building it out of metal and stuff. But there was always like a problem and there was a little bit of something and that made it interesting, the game of it. And it allowed us to connect. But then we thought when we started doing our things, we're like, we want to make sure that we connect students to the problem in like a really real way. And so we started off just like with these letters. That was sort of the beginning of the evolution for us was it was like a letter from a person of, hey, here's this problem. So that way they're solving a problem for a person. And then we started to realize that, teachers love read alouds and they're teaching literacy in their classroom. Why not take that and combine that so that STEM's not just another thing, but that it can fit in with what they're already doing? And then kind of over the last couple of years, even it's been there's a lot of librarians doing STEM and a lot of libraries that do STEM programs. And so it's worked out really well to connect that. And one of the major ways is stories have always been used to teach lessons, like since the beginning of time, whether it was telling stories and then we could write stories and then, printing press, we're printing stories. And they just allow us to teach really powerful lessons. And I have an example here. Carly keeps looking over at this and she's like, I don't want you to share this, but I'm going to because I want to. And I think it's funny. So there's all kinds of good STEM books out there, but sometimes I have a very unique problem at home and I have to write my own story for my kid. And this is just a blank book. You can buy blank books on Amazon, which are great for kids. My kids like writing books in these blank books. It feels they're hardback books, so it feels really nice. But our son at night was this might be too, I don't know, I'm going to go too much of a tangent, but my son at night,
Yep.
he loves to sleep. And so that's sort of the premise of the story. This is our son's name is Charlie. This is about our kid. It's very specific. And our cat kept wanting to go in his room, but he likes to have his door closed. So we would just meow outside his room. And we would hear it meowing in the middle of the night. And then we'd hear him like sprint out of his room, open the door, pick up the cat, and then run and slam a door. And we're like, what just happened? And he did this several nights. And then we'd hear the cat meowing. And he was locking the cat in the bathroom so that it wouldn't meow outside of his house. So I wrote this story about this kid who's sleeping, Charlie, and what does it look like for the cat in the bathroom? And the cat's just like sad. It's like the only water in here is toilet water. And I wrote this book and I read it to him. And I kid you not, after we read this book, he doesn't do it anymore. And he lets the cat sleep with him sometimes. So stories have a powerful way of
Yep.
teaching us a lesson,
Getting a message across.
getting a message across.
Oh my gosh, what a great story. And for those of you who can't see, we'll have a video of this, but I think the majority of people listen to it, is this great homemade book with this great cover on it of
Yeah,
Charlie and the
just
cat
right there.
by Adam. I love it.
Hi,
It's
Adam. Yeah.
fantastic. That's great. So this idea of stories and this idea of read alouds helps STEM more accessible. In your experience, how should teachers be looking at a STEM focused read aloud book? What are the things that you really find are more engaging and deliver on the opportunity?
Carly, why don't you answer
Yeah,
this one? I don't want to talk about that.
I feel like one of the biggest misconceptions is that there is like a certain type of STEM book. Like when you're looking for a book, there is a STEM book and there are books that are not STEM books.
Mhm.
And I feel like any book can be used, pretty much any book can be used as a STEM read aloud. You're just looking for a book that has a problem that students could solve.
Which most books have a problem. If they have some type of plot, there's a problem. There's a conflict.
Right.
Yeah, so I feel like that's one of the biggest misconceptions. And I feel like you also want a variety of books. So when Adam and I have talked before, he's mentioned, you want books that students can relate to, books that students are passionate about. Ask students, what do they want to learn about? But then you also want a balance between things that students don't know about, things that might open the door to different worlds, different places, different
Places they've never been,
experiences
people they never heard of.
that, things other kids across the world go through that maybe they don't experience. That, problems that they could maybe help solve one day that they don't know about, that they're not familiar with, that maybe, there's a STEM career out there that they might be interested in that would solve that problem. So you really want just a good balance of books that students are interested in, and then also books that open the door to things that students might not be aware of.
Yeah, that's great. And does that apply to, I would imagine, growing up with my children and reading some books that are, let's say, more squarely focused around like, STEM or architecture or bringing things to life? Does it apply to fiction and nonfiction as well? So real life examples?
Yeah, I think both are important because, we need fictional stories that teach us things. I think like fables and fairy tales, fables teach us, have all these important things. It's like we can tell kids like, you need to be patient and pace yourself. Or you can read them The Tortoise and the Hare. And it's like, this is what it looks like. Or, with my kids at home, that they're 7 and 9, and sometimes they just scream about something that is like, he's touching me with his foot. But all we hear is a scream from the other side of the house. And we got to say, hey, you can't scream at every little thing because if something's wrong, we're not really going to know. Or we can read them The Boy Who Cried Wolf. And it's like, when the wolf was there, we want to believe you when the wolf is there, guys. We want to believe you. And so we keep coming back to that. This has been ongoing. Any parent out there, I'm sure, can relate to that if your kids are fighting. I think of other things, I was thinking of some examples of books. So what would be some examples of books that we use for STEM? So I think some of them that I love, we grabbed some here since there is a video version of this somewhere.
Yeah.
Like this, If I Built a Series by Chris Van Dusen. He has all kinds. If I built a car, if I built a house. we love all of them. I like at the beginning of the year, like If I Built a School, because it's an imaginative book. And at the beginning of the year, you can say, kids, imagine what your school could look like. And this is a great way to get to know your students because you're like, what are their the trick is that you're tricking them to tell you what their expectations are for the year. They're designing the school. And then as you are thinking about through the school year, you're like, oh, yeah, that kid liked this thing at school. Maybe he liked something from science last year or something
Yeah.
from reading a book or something from somewhere else that from a previous year. And he wants that again this year, or maybe something new that he didn't like. Some of the kids might just be like, we want recess all the time at our school. I don't know. So that's an example of like a book that we like. That's a good STEM book. What else do I have? We love Peter and Paul Reynolds. Going Places is a really good one about kids combining two different ideas. There's some ideas with
You're supposed to make a go-kart,
Yeah.
and there's like these pre-made kits, but these two kids get together and
Decide to
combine
combine
their
theirs.
kit to kind of create their own design,
And
use
so,
their creativity.
but then we like to thinking outside of, okay, what's outside of what they see in their everyday lives. There's books like The Boy Who Harnessed the Wind, there's a Netflix show of that too,
Yeah.
where it's like in another country, a kid using engineering skills to come up with using something wind energy. Or we like The Water Princess, which is about a girl who has to go and get water. And she currently does all kinds of work in her home country.
Has her own foundation.
Has her own
now,
foundation and teaches people STEM stuff, actually.
how to
Yeah.
So it's not only within the foundation. She was talking about how she trains now the women in the village. They
To be
have
engineers.
to know how to not just they can't just install the water pump. They have to know how to
How to fix
maintain
it
it
when
if
it
it
breaks,
breaks. And
So there's all kinds of real world problems to connect to, which I think can be really powerful for students. We always want to be connecting to real world as
Yeah.
much as we can too.
Absolutely, super important. And you guys have all these listings that you're going out in the books. We'll make sure we put those in the notes and everyone so people can actually see
Right.
what your favorites are.
Did you have something else you wanted to say, Carly? You were in it.
I feel like, there's so many, and people always ask us, and we have lists and lists of books, but I feel like you can explore it. Like when our kids were little, we would just go to the library, and I feel like some of our favorite books that we found, like One Plastic Bag
Oh, yeah.
and Iqbal and his ingenious idea about building
We're just wandering around the
a
library.
solar oven. We just wandered around the library
You're like,
and
"Oh, that's
we're like, oh,
interesting."
wow, I never would have, I've never heard of that book. Things will just jump out at you. We also follow STEAM Team Books. You can go to steamteambooks.com or
Okay.
follow STEAM Team Books on social media. It's a group of amazing STEM
Scientists.
and STEAM authors, and they post whenever they have a new book coming out. It's a great way to keep in touch with new books coming out as well.
It's fantastic. I'd like to ask a little bit about kind of two things. One is obviously different books for different age groups and all of that, but you can talk a little bit about sort of this transition from a story and listening, and I can just imagine a reading hour or, things like that. But what does that transition look like to more tactile, hands-on activities and some experiences that you've seen or just something to share in that area?
Yeah, so it's going to look different for different teachers. So we work with a lot of different teachers.
Yeah.
Obviously, I know what it looked like in my classroom as a third grade teacher, but my classroom looks different from a STEM teacher who's
has
dealing
600
with
students a
hundreds of
week.
students and has a strict time frame that they're working with. So I, after reading the story, I had kind of like a 5 to 10 minute planning period. So we would follow the engineering design process. So you read the book, you're introducing the problem, you're giving students an opportunity to plan. So there's kind of like a 5 to 10 minute opportunity. It's quiet. Students are planning. And I like to have students plan individually first. So before you jump into a group and there's that one kid that takes over and is like, okay, guys, here's what we're going to do. Every kid gets, because I'm, like Adam said, I'm the person that needs,
And I'm the one that's going to take
I'm the
over.
one that's going to be like,
I'm the
okay,
one
this
who's
is what we're
gonna-
going to do. I'm the person that I need that 5 to 10 minutes to get my thoughts together. So everyone gets that, 5 to 10 minutes to kind of get their own plan together.
And they get to draw something. We always have kids love to just draw, and getting them they're going to draw out their plan, and then they can take it to a group and say, hey, everybody, let's look at our plans. And they can
Mhm.
design what do we want to build. And then they'll build that, and then they get to test it. And then they get to say, okay, what worked and what went wrong. And some teachers do that differently. So if you only have your kids like 30 minutes a period, like sometimes the teachers will read the book, they'll let kids do all the designing, they'll pick their design, and then the next period they get together, that's their building and testing period. And so sometimes they split it up. We kind of designed them to be about 50 minutes for most of our activities because that seems to be the standard. But, teachers can adjust them as they need to because every teacher
Yeah.
is unique.
Absolutely. And what about students who maybe love building but struggle with reading or literacy? How do you guys approach that?
Carly, this is you. I'll tell you what. So one of the great things about story in combining it with STEM is sometimes kids who are readers are not necessarily builders, and sometimes
Yeah.
kids who are builders are not readers. And by letting the building kids be exposed to the reading, it's like the hook. So, like, it's like, hey, we're gonna get to build this stuff, and you better pay attention during this story. Like, and it engages kids in a different way that they might not get if you're just like, hey, let's sit down and read these couple of paragraphs together or whatever, because they're like, oh, I'm gonna get to build something to this. I need to know what's going on in this story, and it engages kids just on a different level that they otherwise wouldn't get. And I know Carly has talked about with me of like in her classroom when she started introducing STEM, there were kids that just were disconnected to the classroom. And then all of a sudden they were like, school can be fun. Like school can be cool. And I know we go into our kids' classroom too and have done STEM nights at our kids' school. And we can tell what kids, probably didn't connect before. But and when they see us come into the school, they're like, oh, we like to dress up too. So we dressed up at like reindeer one year and like did reindeer games and it was fun. And they had to build all these things. But it just connects on a deeper level, I think. And that's how you get kids hooked into reading. It's like, oh, this story's cool and we built this for this story. And they just everything works together, they remember it better, they're more engaged, and it's ultimately more fun, which is what we're about.
Yeah,
I
and I'm
think
sure
I'll
the
also
empathy.
say we just went through this whole process, but there are those kids, like you said, that love that building time. And even though there is that process, some of those kids might need to hold those materials in their hand before they hold that pencil in their hand, and that's okay. Some of those kids might need to hold those blocks in their hand and kind of piece some things together before they feel comfortable writing things out. And I think that just comes down to knowing your students and
Yeah.
their needs. And I think teachers are really good at doing that and knowing their students,
I
what
think
they need.
kids sometimes struggle with the drawing. Kids get really stuck on drawing, and they can get stuck there. And we created. That's one reason why we have all these creativity challenges we've made. They're like finish the picture because what it does, or we read books like A Beautiful Oops by Barney Salzberg, because it's like, oh, you can make a mess, and stuff
Uh-huh.
doesn't have to look perfect, and you can imagine. Let's practice just making these crazy creative things. And so there's different parts of the process that kids might get stuck on, and it's okay to skip one sometimes. And as Carly was saying, or let them hold those things before they do the other part. But over time, throughout the school year, as you do it more and more, they'll start to get more comfortable with going through the engineering design process or the scientific method, which is really the ultimate goal of elementary STEM. It's like if you can teach kids engineering design process and scientific method, they're going to be really good problem solvers for their whole life.
How have you seen this evolve over you've been doing this for a few years now, more than a few, and how have you seen sort of this area evolve of schools are doing really well or maybe opportunities in some schools?
I think, well, we've seen the STEM has just grown crazy in the last 10 years. I mean, it was kind of, I mean, it's always, I said when I was kids, like first robotics was my first introduction to STEM, and that was middle school. So, like in elementary, I wasn't, actually, no, we did Star Lab. Star Lab's been around forever, and Star Lab is the best. You get to go on this big inflatable thing, look at the stars. It's great. But yeah, and so I had first robotics, but now there's all kinds of different programs that are being developed. There's all kinds of different things, tools that are around that weren't there. In the classroom, we've seen it change significantly because when we started making STEM stuff, it was mostly just like, kindergarten, first grade, second grade teachers just doing our stuff in the
Yeah, it was a lot of
classroom.
classroom teachers. There's a lot more STEM
And
specialists
now STEM
now.
specials are, and it's funny because a lot of our teachers who started 5 years ago or 10 years ago with us, now they're the STEM specialist at their school. It's like they started in kindergarten and they were just like, I'm going to try this or in, third grade and like, I'm going to try this. And now they're like the STEM person in their school and they've grown with that. And we also have to design our things a little bit differently because Sometimes it's like if you're doing it for 25 students, material requirements are a lot different than if you're doing it for 600 students. There's some limitations, and with a large amount of students, you need some reusable stuff like Legos or snap circuits. I've heard those are pretty good.
Yeah, I like them. 'Em. They're alright. So, guys I'm sorry, go ahead, Adam. Yep.
I was just gonna see if Carly had anything to add. That was it. No, okay, go
Awesome.
ahead.
So, guess what does the future look like here of STEM and literacy? And obviously, technology continues to evolve and tools. And how do you see it evolving over the next couple of years? And how do you guys sort of work with that to provide ever evolving and innovative solutions?
We feel like we've seen kind of like ebbs and flows with the technology. Like we've seen times
Really
where
interesting.
there's been like a
Yeah.
big emphasis on the technology. So we could see it really go either way. We could see kind of with this AI emphasis, things really ramp up, but then we could also
It's
see
like I've been following, like, I imagine in the next 5 years, there's going to be a ton of studies on what does technology in the classroom. Should we have iPads in the classroom? Technology in the classroom. That's a big debate that's happening now. There's going to be a lot of studies around that. But I think things that won't change are stories are always going to be powerful. We know that's going to be true in the future. We know connecting stories in STEM is always going to work. We know the engineering design process is good. We know the scientific method is good. And we know things about nature and about our world that we can teach kids, plants and animals and imagination and creativity. And those will stay. But as far as the technology, what robots people are going to use, whatever, things like that, we don't know what those are going to be. We don't know if there's going to be iPads in the classroom or not. But I know that you can teach all this stuff without the technology. You can teach stuff with very little materials. You can have kids can design things with rocks and sticks. They'll figure it out, and they're very creative, and they will do it because they're smart and fun and they like it.
Absolutely. And this is here nor there, but I've got to ask you, like, how fired up are you with the moon mission here last week? And how much fun was that for you guys?
It was so fun. I had kind of forgotten about it. I mean, I knew it was coming up, but then, like, I turned on the TV and it was like 10 minutes till the launch. And I was like, kids, get in here. We're going to watch this. And they were like, I don't know if I want to watch that. But then they sat down and they were asking us all kinds of questions. And we're like, you see, they're just in the tiny little part in the top, and the rest of it's going to like blow up. Like, and they're going to be in outer space. And then we watched them land.
Our
2 or 3
son
years ago.
our son was very curious. He
Oh
had all
man, he had
kinds of
so
questions.
many
I was like, "And
questions.
then they're gonna splash in the water," and he was like, "Well, what if they don't land in the water?" I was like, "Well, they're
I was
still
like,
gonna
I
land
don't
in the
want to talk
water."
about that. But he was like, will they die? And I was like, they might. I was like, this is a huge risk. And then when they landed, it was like, oh, good. That was going to be a tough conversation before bedtime. But
No,
it's
I
exciting. I think just like I said, the next 5 years, we're going to be talking about space, I think, in classrooms with the Artemis missions. It's so cool.
Yeah, and a few stories to go for there, huh? Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. It's so great. This is such a wonderful area, and I think of growing up with my kids and this character of Iggy Peck and this empathy and like it was just so meaningful. And my daughter actually, I'm not saying that was the reason of the stories that we chose, but a science-based neuroscience major and all of that in school. And these characters and stories are just so powerful, and I love how you guys are helping to bring that to life, right? And, it's certainly a passion of yours, which is really
Yeah.
wonderful to see. Any other thoughts or any other closing comments? I know this time goes super quick. We always talk about, "Oh, it won't be too long," but it goes in a snap. So I'd love to hear any final thoughts you guys have around this area.
If you're thinking about doing STEM in your classroom, just try it. Just get started. It's really fun. And if you're a STEM teacher, we believe in you. We're your biggest cheerleaders. If you're looking to find ways to connect stories in STEM, just look up Carly and Adam. Join the STEM Teachers Club. That's our community of over 3,800 teachers from all over the world. And Carly and I don't have all the answers. We shared a little bit of our knowledge today, but we've learned this from other people. And there's so much stuff. Anybody who says they have all the solutions out there, they're selling you something. We don't have all the solutions, but we believe together as teachers, if we work together, our community knowledge, we can accomplish a lot. So that's what gets us fired up. That's what gets us excited about like doing our summits and hanging out with our teachers.
Yeah, that's fantastic, guys. Obviously, you have so much to be proud of, and the impact and the value you're bringing. I know we haven't worked super close together, but I sponsor your annual meeting each January with some snap circuits, and we send things out to teachers who win those prizes. And I know just the impact that they deliver is just incredible, and it's great to see. So we can't thank you enough for all the wonderful work you do of helping advance this idea of problem solving and creativity and confidence and really fueling this thirst for kids to want to learn more and find out what's going on. So really thank you guys so much for taking the time to join us here today at Wired for STEM. Appreciate it.
Thank you for
Yeah, absolutely. And all the best. And like I said, I'll put some things in the notes of some of the great resources you guys provide so we can extend your network a bit more. All
yeah,
right.
thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
Bye bye.
It's great. Bye.